It all goes back to Eternia, a legendary kingdom considered the heart of the universe. There stands Greycowl Castle, a fortress that houses a power capable of surpassing even the gods. To prevent it from falling into the wrong hands, that energy was sealed within the Sword of Power. An ancient prophecy foretells that when darkness threatens to consume Eternia, a chosen one will appear, destined to wield the sword and restore the balance. The chosen one seems to be far from fulfilling his destiny. Adam, the Prince of Eternia, is a young man who prefers play with his faithful companion, Kringer, to training to become a warrior. During combat practice, he shows little enthusiasm. Adam's skill with the sword is something that deeply disappoints his father, King Randor. Even when he faces him in a duel, Adam is defeated at ease. Although his friend Teela tries to encourage him, the boy begins to feel unable to live up to the kingdom's expectations. Everything changes when Eternia is attacked by the forces of Skeletor, a powerful conqueror obsessed with seizing the Sword of Power. The royal guard he fights desperately to contain the invasion, while warriors like Duncan try to halt the enemy advance. Without, however, Skeletor's strength proves overwhelming. The villain defeats the defenders and brings the kingdom to the brink of destruction. Realizing that the situation is lost, Randor orders Queen Marlena to flee with Adam, who remains behind to buy time. During the battle, Skeletor manages to capture the king and proclaims that he will soon rule Eternia. Meanwhile, Marlena manages to reach the sorceress, guardian of Greycowl. There, the Sword of Power is given to young Adam. With tears in her eyes, his mother begs him never to forget who he truly is. The sorceress opens a magic portal to send him far away before Skeletor can reach him. Thus, Adam disappears from Eternia and ends up arriving on Earth. Many years later, she lives in Oklahoma, leading a completely different life. However, she has never forgotten her roots. During a man tries to tell a young woman the truth about Eternia, but she thinks he's crazy. Almost everyone around him has the same reaction. Even Hussein, his best friend and roommate, believes those stories are a fantasy created to cope with the supposed death of his parents in an accident. Even so, Adam never gives up hope of finding the lost sword and returning home. As time passes, his obsession with legends begins to affect his daily life. He has problems at work and is constantly distracted by his research. Antique swords. One day he receives an unexpected message. Someone claims to have found the weapon he's been searching for years. Following the trail, he arrives at a strange shop where he discovers a statue holding the exact sword from his memories. Although at first he can't remove it, he eventually retrieving it before the eyes of several onlookers, and convinced that its power will awaken immediately, he tries to use it to return to Eternia, but nothing happens. That same night, something impossible occurs. While he remains in police custody, a monstrous creature appears on Earth searching for the sword. Just when it seems he will be captured, a familiar figure arrives to rescue him. Teela, the friend he left behind in Eternia, has come to find him. She explains that the sword emitted a signal, which allowed them to locate him. Without wasting any time, they both escape the monster and board a spaceship bound for their true home, Wantu. During the journey, Teela reveals everything that happened after her disappearance. Skeletor conquered Eternia. Her parents were captured, and the kingdom reduced to ruins. When Adam finally returns, he discovers that the world he remembered has virtually vanished. Cities are destroyed. Hope has died out, and the few survivors live in hiding. Meanwhile, Skeletor discovers that the prince, the lost man, has returned and orders him to be found before he can reclaim his destiny. Pella leads Adam to a secret fortress where the last members of the resistance are hiding. However, many don't believe he's really the lost prince. They consider him an imposter and end up locking him up with Teela. Shortly after, Skeletor's troops discover the hideout and launch a new attack. In the midst of the chaos, I befriend a service robot agrees to help him escape in exchange for being treated as more than just a machine. The situation worsens when Skeletor himself arrives in search of the sword. Adam tries to talk and avoid violence, but he soon realizes he has no other choice. Cornered by his enemies, he takes up the Sword of Power and he remembers the words he heard as a child. Then he utters a sacred phrase and raises the weapon to the sky. At that moment, the prophecy is fulfilled. It happens. An immense energy envelopes Adam and awakens a hidden power within him. His appearance changes completely. He gains armor. He becomes legendary and acquires extraordinary strength. He ultimately becomes a champion of Greykal, the hero destined to confront the darkness. Although he hasn't yet fully mastered his new abilities, Adam discovers that he possesses power far superior to that of any ordinary warrior. He breaks as she overcomes her adversary's defenses and manages to save her comrades. Thanks to her intervention, the resistance manages to escape and regain hope had lost for years. As the inhabitants of Eternia begin to believe again in the possibility of looking toward a better future, Skeletor realizes that the heir he thought was lost has returned. Now the true Chosen One has awakened. The Sword of Power has found its wielder, and the final battle for the fate of Eternia is upon us. It's about to begin. At the same time, the fabric ship is attacked again by enemy forces. To defend it, Adam goes outside, ready to face the threat. Although he hasn't fully mastered his new abilities yet, he quickly adapts to his powers. After some despite initial setbacks, he confronts the attackers and uses his superhuman strength to defeat them before they can destroy the ship. After the victory, the ship crashes and everyone is scattered. Meanwhile, Skeletor brutally interrogates several of the members of the Royal Guard to discover the identity of the mysterious warrior who had begun to challenge him. When the prisoners refuse, he resorts to fear and violence. Finally, the criminal reveals the truth. The warrior is none other than Prince Adam, who has returned after years of absence. After the accident, Adam awakens and encounters a strange A-spirit bird reveals an important truth to him. It explains that he is Greyk's chosen champion and that his destiny is to restore peace to Eternia. However, the conversation is interrupted when Teela appears. Later, they meet with Duncan. Although the relationship between him and his daughter continues, it's complicated because of past conflicts. In a quiet moment, Adam and Teela reminisce about the years they spent apart. Both they admit they missed each other deeply and never forgot their friendship. When the conversation seems to take a more romantic turn, Teela clarifies that she's seen him as part of her family, almost like a younger brother, making things clear between them. That night, Skeletor broadcasts a message to all of Eternia. In it, he declares that the kingdom belongs to him and that no one can take his power. He publicly announces a return of the Lost Prince. Then he offers Adam a deal: surrender the sword in exchange for seeing his parents alive again. But if he refuses the offer, he promises to unleash a tragedy that will doom the entire planet. Determined to rescue his family, Adam embarks on a mission to the fearsome Serpent Mountain, accompanied by Teela and Duncan. After overcoming numerous dangers, they reach the interior of the enemy fortress, where they finally find King Randor. The long-awaited reunion lasts only moments before a new battle erupts around them. During the confrontation, Adam demonstrates for the first time the true extent of his powers. However, Skeletor's sorceress manages to immobilize him using magic. Taking advantage of the situation, the villain threatens to execute Randor in front of him. Although Adam manages to break free and causes a huge to collapse is too much to stop, but the damage is already done. Among the rubble, Adam manages to rescue his father. In his final moments, Randor confesses that he always wanted to prepare him for a world he considered cruel and dangerous. He admits that many times it was too harsh, but she insists she did it all to protect him. Before she can say everything she feels, she dies in front of the sun. The loss leaves Adam devastated. Shortly after, he is captured along with the rest of the prisoners, including his mother. Meanwhile, Skeletor tries to activate the Sword of Power, repeating the sacred words, but fails time and time again. The sorceress concludes that they will need to perform a special ritual at Greykal Castle to unleash their full potential. Locked in the dungeons, Duncan admits to feeling responsible for Eternia's suffering. He believes he has failed those he swore to protect. However, Adam refuses to give up. He addresses all the prisoners and reminds them who they are. He assures them that Eternia is still their home and that it is still worth fighting for. His words restore hope to the group. Shortly after, they manage to escape and embark on a desperate race towards Greykal. As Skeletor heads to the castle to complete his ritual, the heroes prepare their final attack. The final battle begins when both armies clash in a massive confrontation. Teela fights against the enemy sorceress. Battlecat faces a gigantic beast, and Duncan fights alongside the robot to hold back the invading forces. Although they manage to fight their way through, but an old enemy appears and destroys the robot during the battle. Furious, Dylan attacks him and manages to defeat him. Ultimately, he honors his fallen comrade. Inside Grayskull, Adam faces Skeletor head-on. However, the villain manages to prevail, and the Sword of Power ends up breaking. Taking advantage of the situation, Skeletor invades Adam's mind and forces him to relive the most painful moment of his life, the taunts he suffered on Earth, his failures, and all the doubts that haunted him for years. Her goal is to convince him that Eternia was never his true home. When he seems to have lost everything hope, Adam encounters the spirit bird again. It reveals to him the truth he has been seeking from the beginning. The power was never in the sword, but within him. The sword was only a symbol. What truly makes him the chosen one is his goodness, empathy, and the ability to inspire others. With that understanding, Adam regains his confidence. The sword is rebuilt and power awakens. He is stronger than before. Upon returning to the fight, he tries to convince Skeletor to abandon his hatred, suggesting that he can still change. But the villain rejects any possibility of redemption and declares that evil is part of his nature. The final confrontation then begins. Skeletor attacks with all his might, convinced that Adam is still weak. However, the hero now he has completely mastered his abilities. After an intense battle, he destroys Skeletor's staff and finally defeats him. A gigantic explosion marks the end of the war and puts an end to the threat that had plagued Eternia for years. 6 months later, peace has returned to the kingdom. The queen has reclaimed her throne and reconstruction begins. Duncan he manages to repair the robot, bringing her back to life. Adam and Teela share quiet moments reminiscing about their childhood as he reveals the name. The heroic man he had imagined since childhood. Man. Later, Adam takes his friend from Earth to visit Eternia to prove to him that it was all real. However, the peace is short-lived. A new emergency signal appears on the horizon. Without hesitation, Hyman mounts Battlecat and sets off on a new adventure. In the post-credit scene, the Queen talks with Duncan about the losses she suffered throughout those years. Then a mysterious warrior named Adora appears, bearer of a powerful sword and a destiny yet unknown, leaving the door open for future stories. And so we've reached the end of Hyman, Masters of the Universe.